Some men get pushed to their limit and pour themselves a stiff drink and go to bed. I got pushed to mine when I found out my 8-year-old granddaughter had been left home alone for 2 straight days while her parents took a cruise with their biological son. So at midnight, I did what any grandfather would do. I called the best family law attorney in Tennessee from an airport bathroom, but we'll get to that. Tuesday, March 4th, Knoxville, Tennessee. 11:47 p.m. The recliner in my living room creaked under my weight as I dozed off, the faint blue glow of the TV flickering across the worn carpet like a lazy nightlight. Some home renovation show droned on low, a couple bickering over countertop choices, like the fate of the free world hung in the balance. My kind of Tuesday, quiet, predictable. The kind a 76-year-old man from East Tennessee earns after decades of just showing up. My phone buzzed on the side table, the vibration slicing through the low hum of the fridge in the kitchen. I squinted at the screen, the letters blurring for a second before they sharpened. Mrs. Lucy. Now listen, Mrs. Lucy Coleman does not call past 8 o'clock. Ever. She's 81, the kind of neighbor who turns in with the chickens and treats bedtime like church. The last time she rang after dark, it was because a raccoon had gotten into her trash and she needed moral support. So when her name lit up my screen at 11:47 on a Tuesday night in March, every hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. The room suddenly felt smaller. The air got thicker with that familiar old house smell of pine cleaner and yesterday's coffee. I answered on the second ring, my voice still thick with sleep. Lucy? Noah? Hers came back, low and careful, the way people talk in hospital hallways when they're trying not to wake the bad news. I'm sorry to call so late. I just didn't know what else to do. I sat bolt upright, the recliner snapping forward. Sleep vanished instantly. My pulse kicked up like I'd slammed bad diner coffee. What happened? She let out a slow breath that carried the full weight of the moment. I've been hearing Ella cry through the wall for 2 nights running. I knocked this afternoon. She opened the door by herself, Noah, in her pajamas. It was 4 in the afternoon, she said, and there was a bowl of dry cereal sitting on the couch with the TV flickering cartoons to nobody. The little girl was completely alone. The room around me went dead still, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. I asked where her mama was. Lucy kept going, her words measured but starting to crack at the edges. Ella had told her that Mom and Dad went on a trip. They left 2 days ago, Sunday morning. I pressed harder. Had any adult checked on her? A lady from down the street brought a sandwich yesterday, but Ella didn't even know the woman's name. My hand tightened around the phone until the plastic creaked. Then Lucy delivered the line that finished me. She asked about me first. Does my grandpa know? That was the very first thing out of that 8-year-old mouth. I was already on my feet, shoes half laced from earlier, heart hammering against my ribs. I'm on my way. Before I even had both shoes on, I called Ella. The phone rang once, just once, like she'd been sitting there in the dark, waiting for anyone to remember she existed. Grandpa? Lord, that voice. 8 years old, and already sounding like someone who'd learned not to expect too much from the world. Hey, baby, you okay? I think so. The way she hedged it hit me like a gut punch, already protecting everyone else's feelings before her own. My chest cracked clean down the middle right there in the dim hallway light. Ella, listen to me. Is the door locked? Yes, sir. Good girl. Have you eaten today? She had cereal that morning. Mrs. Lucy brought a sandwich yesterday, but she'd saved some for today because she didn't know when help might show up again. The words just hung there, heavy. She had rationed 1 sandwich across 2 days, unsure if anyone was ever coming back. I grabbed my keys, the metal cold and familiar against my palm. Pack a bag, sweetheart. Grandpa's coming right now. You're not spending another night alone. Silence stretched across the line. Then, so quiet I almost missed it. Grandpa, did I do something wrong? Because Michael got to go, and I asked Mommy if I could come, and she said the cruise cost too much. Her voice cracked like thin ice. My birthday was last month. They got me a backpack. I thought maybe I'd been bad, but I can't remember what I did. I stopped dead in my hallway. In Knoxville, Tennessee, at midnight, shoes half on, the overhead light buzzing faintly above me. Right then, standing among the framed photos of better days, I made a decision. Not some hot-blooded emotional snap. Not reactive. A permanent one. The kind that reshapes everything that comes after. Ella, you did nothing wrong. You hear me? Not one single thing. My voice stayed steady, even as my free hand clenched into a fist. Now pack your rabbit and your favorite shirt, and unlock the front door. Grandpa will be there in 4 minutes. Mrs. Lucy was sitting on the porch steps when my headlights swept across Birchwood Lane, the streetlights throwing long shadows over the quiet suburban lawns. Ella huddled next to her, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of laundry detergent and worry. Her little rolling suitcase waited at her feet, that stuffed rabbit wedged tight under one arm like a lifeline. When the beams hit her, she stood up slow, then bolted toward the truck. She didn't say a word when she reached me, just threw her arms around my waist and held on like the world might yank her away again. I scooped her up, all 52 pounds of her, right there in the driveway of my son's house. Over her shoulder, I caught Mrs. Lucy pressing her fingers to her lips, fighting to hold herself together in the cool night air. "I called his cell," Lucy said quietly, her breath visible in the chill. "Yesterday morning. No answer. Left a voicemail. Nothing. Of course nothing." I carried Ella to my truck, buckled her in with careful hands, tucked the blanket snug around her legs against the draft from the vents. Before I shut the door, Lucy touched my arm, her grip surprisingly firm for her age. "Noah, I know an attorney. She's good. Real good. Family law, name's Catherine Watson. Office downtown on Gay Street. 22 years and she's never lost a custody case. Not one." I met her eyes in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. "Send me her number. Right now, Lucy." She already had her phone out, fingers flying across the screen. Ella was out cold before we hit the end of the street, her breathing finally evening out in the back seat. I drove back toward Maple Ridge in dead silence, radio off. Just the low rumble of the highway under the tires and the steady whoosh of the heater. The cab smelled of old leather seats and faint pine air freshener. At the intersection of Kingston Pike and North Shore, a red light caught me. "Don't do it, Noah," some voice in my head warned. But I did. I pulled up Harry's Instagram, the screen too bright against the dark. And there it was posted at 8:34 p.m. that same evening. Harry, Renee, and Michael on the deck of a cruise ship off Florida's coast. Golden hour light, making everything look postcard perfect. Renee in a flowing white sundress, Michael clutching a virgin cocktail with a silly little umbrella. Harry, my son, my blood, the kid I'd coached through Little League strikes and driven to college move-in with tears in my eyes, had his arm around his wife, grinning wide like a man carrying zero weight on his conscience. The caption hit like a slap. "Family time. So grateful for these two." These two. Not three. Two. The light flipped green. I didn't move. Horns blared behind me. I still sat there, staring at those words while the intersection lights reflected off the windshield. The car behind laid on the horn longer this time, real annoyed now. "Yeah, buddy. Me too. Me too." I got Ella home safe. Settled her into the guest room with her rabbit, an extra quilt from the closet, and a glass of water on the nightstand. The bedside lamp cast a soft yellow pool across the walls. I perched on the edge of the bed until her breathing turned deep, and even, watching the last of the tension finally ease from her small face. Then I headed to the kitchen table, the linoleum cool under my socks. Laptop open, I brewed a pot of coffee I didn't need, the bitter aroma cutting through the quiet house. I started documenting everything, every date, every detail, Ella's words, verbatim, Mrs. Lucy's account, that Instagram timestamp, the unanswered voicemail. This wasn't blind rage talking. This was evidence, cold and stacked like bricks for a wall that wasn't coming down. At 2:11 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Lucy had forwarded Catherine Watson's contact. "Watson and Associates Family Law, Gay Street downtown, 22 years deep." I saved it, then opened a new tab and started booking flights to Miami. Because when you're a grandfather in Knoxville, who just pulled his 8-year-old granddaughter out of an empty house where she'd been stretching one sandwich and dry cereal for 2 days. You don't just get mad. You get organized. Wednesday morning hit Maple Ridge like any other, except the coffee tasted sharper and my hands wouldn't stop shaking as I poured the second cup. The kitchen clock ticked loud in the quiet house, sunlight slanting through the blinds and catching dust motes dancing over the countertop. Ella padded in on socked feet, hair a wild mess, that stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm like it was the only thing anchoring her to the world. She stopped in the doorway, rubbing one eye, looking up at me with that small, confused owl stare. "Grandpa, why are you already dressed?" The question hung there, innocent and heavy at the same time. I set the mug down, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes yet. "Because we've got a plane to catch, Ladybug." She blinked slow, processing. "A plane?" "Miami, Florida. You and me. We leave in 3 hours." Her little mouth opened, then closed. The corners twitched, like she was scared to let herself hope too hard. I watched her face shift through a dozen emotions in seconds: doubt, wonder, that tiny spark of joy she probably hadn't felt in days. Then she let out this scream of pure delight and bolted down the hallway, feet slapping the hardwood. I sank back into the kitchen chair, staring into my coffee, the steam curling up warm against my face. That sound, the unrestrained 8-year-old joy, cut straight through the exhaustion. That's what all of this was for. One scream like that made every late-night call and every documented detail worth it. By the time we landed in Miami and pulled up to the Key Biscayne Island resort, I was already questioning my own choices. I'm a 76-year-old guy who drives a beat-up Ford F-150 and thinks Cracker Barrel counts as fine dining. Luxury isn't my scene bellhops, fancy turn-down service, menus without prices printed on them. But I'd booked the ocean suite anyway, figuring Ella deserved something that felt like magic after those cold, empty nights. The bellhop swung the door open, and the whole Atlantic Ocean spilled into view through floor-to-ceiling windows, sparkling under the morning sun like someone had taken a giant Windex bottle to the horizon. Salt air drifted in, mixed with the faint scent of fresh linens and expensive wood polish. Ella froze right there in the entryway, rabbit dangling from her left fist, both hands limp at her sides. She stood perfectly still for a full 10 seconds, just staring. "Grandpa." Her voice came out barely above a whisper, awed and small. "Are we rich?" I barked out a laugh so hard I had to drop my bag on the marble floor. "We are for the next 5 days, baby." She asked if she could touch the window. I told her she could lick it if she wanted. We were paying enough for it. That bright, surprised giggle of hers bounced off the high ceilings and marble, light and free in a way that punched me right in the chest. She ran straight for the glass, palms slapping against it. Right there, watching her press her face to the view, I felt something crack inside me again. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd heard that sound, months, maybe longer. The absence had snuck up on me, until it roared back. The next 4 days blurred into something I'll carry until they lower me into the ground. Day 1 at the resort water park, Ella flew down the main slide 11 times straight. I counted every single one. By the 7th run, the teenage lifeguard at the top was giving her fist bumps like an old friend. By the 11th, a whole crowd of strangers at the bottom cheered her on like she was racing for gold. She kind of was, in her own quiet way, racing to feel normal again. Day 2 brought horseback riding on the beach at sunrise. The guide, a quiet man named Ray with sun-leathered skin, helped her onto a gentle brown mare called Biscuit. The sky bled pink and gold over the water, waves lapping soft against the sand. Ella sat tall in the saddle, back straight like she'd been born for it, glancing down at the hoof prints, then out at the endless ocean, then back at me, walking alongside with my phone out. "Grandpa, take a picture." I snapped about 40, the shutter clicking steady. I posted one on Facebook later, Ella on Biscuit with the ocean behind her, that huge smile lighting up her whole face. Caption said, "My granddaughter on her first horse, never looked more at home." I knew Harry would see it, posted it anyway. Call it information, call it a preview, Call it a grandfather who'd finally run out of patience for silence. Day 3, we hit the cooking class with Antonio Caruso, this 8-year-old chef from Naples who'd somehow landed in a Miami resort kitchen. The man had forearms thick as ship ropes and an accent so thick it needed subtitles, calling everyone my friend, whether you were staff, a guest, or a passing seagull. Ella stepped into that flour-dusted space, and Antonio spread his arms wide, like she'd sailed in from across the ocean. "Ah, my smallest student. Come, today we make pasta from scratch, yes? You ready to work?" She glanced at me. I nodded. She squared those little shoulders like she was heading into battle and said, "I'm ready." Flour ended up everywhere on her cheeks. In Antonio's hair, somehow on my shirt, even though I stayed in the doorway. He talked the whole time about Naples, his mother's tiny kitchen, how pasta was nothing but flour, eggs, and love. Ella listened with total focus, tongue poking out in concentration, small hands kneading the dough like muscle memory from another life. At the end, Antonio tasted her batch, closed his eyes with full dramatic flair, and declared her a natural. Pointed straight at me. "You bring her back next year, yes? I make her a chef." Ella beamed so wide, I thought her face might split. Flour still on her nose, grin saying she'd just won something big. But the real work happened after she crashed each night. I'd slip out to the balcony once her breathing evened out, close the sliding door soft against the ocean breeze, and settle into the chair with the salt air whipping around me. Every night at 9 sharp, I called Catherine Watson. She didn't waste breath on small talk. 22 years in family law had burned that out of her long ago, and that suited me just fine. Night 1, I laid out every fact, every timestamp, no fluff. She interrupted twice, pinning down exact times like a surgeon marking incisions. When I finished, she went quiet, the kind of pause that means wheels turning hard. "Okay, here's where we stand, Noah. What they did has a legal definition. Leaving an 8-year-old without proper supervision for over 24 hours in Tennessee crosses the line into supervisory neglect." I gripped the cool metal railing, knuckles white against the night sky. "You're certain? I've built cases on a lot less. Your neighbor's eyewitness account is solid gold, direct, firsthand. The child's statements need recording properly. That Instagram post during the exact window? Damning. Your voicemail puts you as the one who stepped up." She paused again. "I'll need school records too. Any behavioral notes, attendance flags, counselor mentions from the last couple years." We mapped the next moves. Enforceable grandparent visitation rights, a formal report to Child Protective Services, and a motion for full psychological evaluation of the home environment tied to Ella's welfare. "Will she have to testify?" I asked, throat tight. Catherine's voice stayed level as steel. "Not if I do my job right. And I always do my job right." I believed every word. Night 2, she walked me through the money side. Trust, restructuring, college fund setup, will changes. She talked irrevocable trusts, like other people discuss the weather. Matter of fact, inevitable. Once filed, it can't be touched. Not by Harry, not by Renee, not by any lawyer they drag in. I asked if she was sure. Never been more certain in my life. By the time I hung up, documents were already drafting. Night 3, the school records came in 2 years of notes showing clear decline. A counselor flag from 6 months back that Harry and Renee had seen, signed off on, and then ignored. I was relaying it all when the sliding door whispered open behind me. Ella stood there in her pajamas, rabbit dangling, eyes squinty with sleep and suspicion. "Grandpa, who are you talking to?" I covered the phone quick. "Just a work call, Ladybug. Back to bed, it's nighttime." She weighed it like a judge, then asked for water. When I mentioned the fancy bottle from the mini fridge, she negotiated like a pro. I nearly laughed despite everything. 1 bottle, then bed. She vanished. Catherine had heard the whole exchange, and I swear, let the tiniest warmth slip into her voice. She sounds like she's doing considerably better. She really is. Good. Hold on to that contrast. It'll matter in front of a judge. Night 4, we were in the main restaurant. White tablecloths, soft candlelight, bread basket arriving before we even settled. Ella tried shrimp for the first time, making faces with every bite and giving a full running commentary until she declared she loved them. I watched her, thinking this is exactly what she looks like when no one's making her feel invisible. Then her fork clattered down. She went quiet, stared at the cloth, and looked up with those big brown eyes. "Grandpa, am I adopted because something is wrong with me?" The whole restaurant kept moving, glasses clinking, laughter from the bar, waiters calling specials, but at our table everything froze. I set my own fork down slow, reached across the white expanse, and took both her small hands in mine. The truth came out careful, age-appropriate, every piece honest. What adoption really means, that being chosen isn't a consolation prize, but the whole damn race. Her birth mother had been young and scared, and giving her up was love, not abandonment. I promised I'd fight through every legal brick wall in Tennessee before letting anyone make her feel like leftovers. Her eyes shimmered. She nodded slow, processing with that serious little face. Then she glanced at my bread basket. "Can I have some of yours?" "Take it all. And dessert? Order two." She smiled small at first, then wider, the real one that reaches her eyes and stays. I excused myself to the restroom after, ran cold water over my wrists at the sink, and stared hard at the mirror. I'd held steady for her at that table, but out there on the Atlantic, Harry was probably sleeping easy amid champagne and curated photos. That thought burned. I dried my hands, straightened my collar, and walked back out knowing the waiting was over. Catherine had work to do. We were heading home to Knoxville, and I was done giving anyone the benefit of the doubt. Sunday, March 16th, Knoxville, Tennessee, 4:47 p.m. Ella fell asleep on the plane home with her head on my shoulder, her stuffed rabbit in her lap, and a half-eaten bag of pretzels still clutched in her hand like she'd just stopped mid-snack and checked out completely. The flight attendant smiled at us when she came by to collect trash. I held up one hand. "Don't wake her, please." She nodded and moved on quietly. I sat there at 30,000 feet with my granddaughter asleep against me and thought about what was waiting back in Knoxville. Not with dread, with something closer to quiet certainty, the kind a man feels when he knows exactly what he's walking into and is already prepared for every version of it. Harry and Renee had landed 2 days earlier. I knew because Harry had finally responded to my 3 in the morning voicemail. Not a phone call, not even a real sentence. 6 words via text, no punctuation, no explanation. "We need to talk. Coming home Sunday." I read it twice, then I forwarded it to Catherine Watson with one line attached. "Monday morning, my house. Be there at 9. Catherine replied in under 4 minutes. "Already cleared my calendar. I'll bring everything." Monday, March 17th, Maple Ridge, Knoxville, Tennessee, 8:59 a.m. Catherine Watson arrived at my front door at 8:59 sharp, 1 minute early, which I would later learn was the latest she ever arrived anywhere. Charcoal blazer, low heels, a leather briefcase that had clearly seen its share of ugly rooms long before mine. She walked in, set her files on my dining room table, accepted a cup of coffee without a word, and sat down like she had been sitting at that exact table her entire career. I liked her more every single time I saw her. "They don't know I'm here?" she asked, eyes still on her folder. "They think it's just a family conversation." The faintest trace of a smile crossed her face. "It is, just a very well-documented one." At 9:03 a.m., I heard Harry's car pull into the driveway. The engine cut off. "Here we go." The front door opened. Harry stepped in first, my son, 38 years old, still carrying that fresh cruise ship tan, wearing a jacket like he'd chosen it carefully for this moment. But underneath the tan, he looked exhausted, the deep kind of tired that no amount of sleep can fix, because it lives somewhere rest can't reach. Renee followed right behind him, chin high, shoulders squared, jaw tight. She had clearly spent the entire drive rehearsing her side of the story and arrived fully armored, ready for battle. Harry opened his mouth to speak. Then his eyes landed on Catherine. He froze mid-step like someone had yanked the plug on him. "Dad." "Who?" "Harry. Renee." I kept my voice even. "This is Catherine Watson, family law attorney, 22 years experience. office on Gay Street downtown. Please sit down, there's coffee. Renee's gaze flicked from Catherine to me, to the open folder on the table and back again. Something shifted behind her eyes. Not fear yet, but the first cold click of recalculation. Noah, she said, voice carefully controlled. We came here for a family conversation. Not a, please sit down, Mrs. Fletcher, Catherine said. Just 4 words. Quiet, polite, and somehow impossible to argue with. Renee sat. Not because she wanted to, but because the tone in Catherine's voice made any other choice feel far worse. I had felt that same tone over the phone from Miami. I understood exactly why Renee obeyed. Harry lowered himself into the chair beside her, hands flat on the table like he was trying to steady himself. He still wouldn't look directly at me. He already knew. He had known since the second he listened to my voicemail on that cruise ship. He'd been carrying it for 2 weeks, and it was written all over his face, for anyone who cared to look. Catherine opened her folder without any drama. No theatrical pause. She simply slid one typed sheet of paper across the polished wood like she was passing the salt. A timeline. Clean. Precise. Merciless. Sunday, March 2nd. Harry and Renee Fletcher depart Knoxville with minor child Michael Fletcher for Port of Miami. Minor child Ella Fletcher, age 8, remains at the family residence on Birchwood Lane without adult supervision. March 2nd through March 4th. Ella Fletcher observed alone at the residence by neighbor Lucy Coleman. Child reported surviving on dry cereal and a single sandwich over the 2-day period. No confirmed adult supervision. Tuesday, March 4th, 11:47 p.m. Lucy Coleman contacts Noah Fletcher. Tuesday, March 4th, 11:59 p.m. Noah Fletcher retrieves Ella Fletcher from the residence. Harry read it. His face stayed completely still. Renee read it. Her face changed a lot. This is completely, you can't just, we made arrangements. Mrs. Fletcher. Catherine's voice remained perfectly pleasant, perfectly immovable. I'm going to save everyone some time. What is documented on that page has a specific legal definition under Tennessee state statute. Leaving a minor child under the age of 10, without adequate adult supervision, meets the threshold for supervisory neglect. We are not here this morning to debate whether it occurred. It occurred. Mrs. Lucy Coleman has provided a signed written statement. We have time-stamped social media documentation. We have the child's own account recorded and notarized. She slid a second sheet across the table. We are here to discuss what happens next. Renee opened her mouth again. Harry reached over and put his hand firmly on her arm. She stopped. I noted it, the first decisive thing my son had done in this entire mess. 2 weeks late, but I noted it. Catherine laid everything out the way a surgeon cuts clean, precise, no wasted motion. 3 simultaneous legal actions already drafted and ready to file. Enforceable grandparent visitation rights, court, ordered, and non-negotiable in scope. A formal report to Child Protective Services, documented and detailed, supported by 2 years of school behavioral records, including a counselor flag from 6 months prior that Harry and Renee had received, acknowledged in writing, and completely ignored, and a motion for full psychological evaluation of the home environment as it directly related to Ella's emotional welfare, supported by documented behavioral decline, teacher testimony, and the stark contrast between Ella's current state in my care and what she had been enduring at home. With every document Catherine placed on the table, Renee's color drained a little more. She went from controlled defensive pink to a pale, sickly shade. I recognized instantly the color of someone doing frantic mental math and realizing every answer came up against them. Harry hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. He just stared at the timeline the way a man stares at the wreck he caused. Catherine folded her hands on the table. The CPS report has been fully drafted. It has not yet been filed. That remains a choice for the next 72 hours. The silence that followed was heavy. Real silence. The kind you can feel pressing on your chest. Then Harry Fletcher, my own son, finally looked up from that piece of paper and met my eyes for the first time since he walked through the door. His eyes were red. Dad, just that one word. My name. carrying every single thing he hadn't said for 2 weeks. Confession, apology, and desperate question all crushed into one syllable. I waited. I gave him nothing. I let him carry the weight the rest of the way himself. I knew it was wrong, he said, voice rough and cracking. I knew the whole time. Renee said it was just this one trip, that we'd make it up to Ella when we got home. And I told myself that was true because it was easier than... He stopped. His jaw worked hard. I packed my bag, and I walked past her bedroom. She was sitting on her bed looking at me, and I kept walking, Dad. I kept walking. I closed the front door, and I got in the car. His voice broke completely on the last word. Renee turned sharply to look at him. He didn't look back at her. He kept his eyes locked on mine, red, exhausted, completely defenseless. The room was so quiet I could hear the kitchen clock ticking. I looked at my son for a long moment. The boy who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long Sunday drives. The boy I taught to throw a baseball in the backyard on Maple Ridge. The boy I dropped off at college and cried the whole way home. The man, sitting across from me now, the one who had packed a suitcase, walked past his daughter's bedroom door and kept going anyway. I wanted to be furious. I was furious. But underneath the fury, deeper and older, was something else entirely. Pure, clean grief. For the father I thought I had raised, and the man I no longer fully recognized sitting in front of me. I let myself feel it for exactly 3 seconds. Then I opened my folder. I know you knew, Harry, I said quietly. That's the part that kept me up at night. He flinched like the words had physically hit him. Good. I slid my folder across the table. Harry picked it up with both hands, read the first page carefully, set it down like it was made of glass. Renee snatched it, read faster, and set it down harder. My updated will reviewed, revised, and formally notarized by Catherine's firm the week before, while Ella was eating shrimp and negotiating minibar water in Miami. A significant portion of my estate, the Maple Ridge house, the investment accounts, the land my own father left me on the edge of Knoxville that had been in this family for 40 years now, sat locked inside an irrevocable trust, established solely and permanently for Ella Fletcher, to be released in full on her 18th birthday, managed by an independent trustee, overseen entirely by Watson and Associates. Irrevocable, meaning done, meaning permanent, meaning sealed, meaning no lawyer Harry or Renee could ever hire, no matter how expensive, no matter how aggressive, would ever touch it. Additionally, a college fund in Ella's name already set up, already funded, already earning interest, while we all sat in this room. Renee stared at the document. Then she looked up at me. For the first time all morning, for the first time since she walked in with her chin high and her armor on, that armor was completely gone. What was left underneath wasn't anger. It was fear. Real fear. The kind that hits when you finally realize the person you underestimated has already outmaneuvered you at every turn while you weren't paying attention. Noah, she started. You chose who mattered to you, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. I just said it the way you say something that has already been decided. So did I. Nobody spoke. Good. Catherine laid out the resolution terms. 4 conditions clear, specific, legally binding, and entirely non-negotiable. 1. Ella begins weekly sessions with a licensed child therapist within 30 days. All costs covered by the trust. 2. I receive legally enforceable visitation rights, effective immediately. Every other weekend. 2 full weeks every summer. Major holidays to be discussed and agreed upon in writing. 3. Harry and Renee complete a minimum of 4 sessions of family counseling together and individually. Documentation of attendance required. 4. The CPS report stays sealed in Catherine's files for 1 full calendar year. Any violation of any single condition, 1 missed session, 1 incident, and it gets filed that same day. No warning call, no second chance. Filed. Catherine closed her briefcase with a soft, deliberate click. These are not suggestions, she said pleasantly. They are terms. Renee looked at Harry. A whole silent conversation passed between them in maybe 4 seconds. Then she looked back at the table and gave one single, tight nod. Like it cost her something she knew she was never getting back. It did. Good. They signed at 10:34 a.m. Harry stood up slowly, like the chair had suddenly become too heavy. He paused at the dining room doorway, back turned to me, one hand gripping the frame so tight his knuckles went white. Is she... His voice cracked on the word. Is Ella okay? I let the question sit there in the thick silence for a long moment, long enough for it to sink in deep. She will be, I said quietly. No thanks to you, but she will be. He gave one small nod at the doorframe, still not turning around. Then he walked out. Renee followed right behind him without saying a single word or looking back. The front door clicked shut behind them, a soft, final sound that seemed to echo through the whole house. I sat there at the dining room table for a long time after they left, staring at the signed papers in front of me. The coffee had gone cold. Catherine gathered her files, snapped her briefcase shut, and gave me a small, professional nod. You did the right thing, she said simply. Then she was gone too. 6 months later, September, Knoxville, Tennessee. Ella calls me every Sunday at 6:00 p.m. Has not missed a single one. Last Sunday, she talked for 47 minutes straight, without pausing for air about school, about her therapist, Evelyn, who she swears always smells like a bakery, which is weird, but I actually really like it, about the pasta she made for Harry's birthday using Antonio's recipe, about how Michael let her pick the movie on Friday night, and she chose something he obviously hated. She said she felt a little bad about it, but also, honestly, not really. That last part, she absolutely got that from me, and I'm choosing to be proud of it. Harry shows up to every school event now. 3rd row, every single time. He claps the loudest, but he doesn't make a big production out of it. No announcements, no performative gestures. He just shows up and stays until the very end. It's not redemption, not yet, but it's the road to it. And I know the difference between a man who's only performing change and a man who's actually trying. Harry is trying. Renee is harder. She's civil. She's present. And in some weeks, she's genuinely trying. And for now, that has to be enough. The counselor told Harry. And Harry eventually told me during one of our own conversations that if slowly, carefully started up again, that Renee had built her entire idea of family around Michael. Ella had always been something she didn't quite know how to make room for. I'm not a therapist. I'm not even going to pretend I fully understand it. They spent $20,000 trying to make her feel invisible. I spent more than that to make damn sure she never forgets she was always worth seeing. And that, right there, is the whole story.